Well, this is super exciting. How about an unboxing? No, it's not the latest Rolex out of Geneva. In fact, this box is 100 years old. A Hamilton. Lovely intricate design on this in an original box. Let's see what's inside. Bit creaky. Wow, look at that. It's a Hamilton 912, and there's a guarantee warranty card certificate in here as well. So, box and papers. J.A. Stapf and Son, Hamilton. I think these are New York jewelers, and they were operating in the 1900s out of a town called Dunkirk in New York. I researched them, and they shared some offices with the New York Telephone and Telegraph Company. I think I've got an old picture of their building. This one's coming with a chain and this penknife. All looks in good condition. Look at that. Beautiful blue velvet cased box. All looks original to the watch. Our watch is not running. It looks like it's a press fit for the bezel. I guess the back too. Why don't we see if we can get that opened. I think I'll probably have to remove the chain, but I can see just on the side here a small lip, and perhaps we can just get our opener in there and pop this case off. Proving a little stiff. Makes you wonder when this was last opened. Let's have another go. Ah, there it goes. Wow, look at that. That really does look in very nice condition. Nice back too. Hamilton Watch Company, Lancaster. Let's take a look at this movement. It's beautiful. Well, let's see if we can work out what's going on with this watch. We'll get it into the time grapher machine and see if we can get it started up. I'm wondering if it will start. I don't think there's any wind on it just yet. No, it's not starting up. Let's just give it a little bit of help. Oh, wait a minute. It will move. And it stopped. Okay, well that could be a number of things. Perhaps it just needs a good service and it's gummed up. I mean, it's possible that this hasn't been serviced in a long time. Or there could be something with regards to the hairspring or possibly mainspring, or I will need to check all of it. I think it's deserving of a fresh service and fresh oils. A lovely piece. So let's open it up and find out what we have. I just need to remove this front bezel. I did loosen it earlier. I've always found it easier to just set the hands up to 12 o'clock to remove them. I'm just putting this plastic sheet over the dial to protect it. And we'll just pop these hands off. They do look in really nice condition. The blued steel. And we'll just put those away for safekeeping. We'll just turn this over and take the back off, and that will give us access to the movement. And there are a couple of case screws here. I just need to find the right screwdriver for them. This one should work. And this movement comes out from the front side. It should be loose once we've taken these out. Yep. There are 3 screws here that hold that dial in place on the sides. We'll just remove those. Sometimes just a little bit of Rodico is needed to get those screws out. We can get this dial removed. It's in really nice condition still. It's a bit dusty. We'll clean that up later, but for now I think we'll just protect it in this dial box. I'll work on the dial side to begin with, and we'll remove this cannon pinion. These are friction fit. Everything looks a little bit dry under here, so I'm not thinking it's been serviced very recently. These are a bit tricky to get out. We'll try with the tweezers, but no, I'll resort to the Rodico, and then we can grip them and away they come. And there's some pretty beefy springs here. I just want to be careful not to let those fly over my bench. So I'll just hold them down and then see if we can leverage this away. Now it's quite stiff. It's the sort of thing that will go flying. There we go. I also see there's a smaller one underneath. I don't have too much room to get into the spring side of that either. Yeah, I don't think these brass tweezers are going to work for me. I'll try the steel ones. No, they're not strong enough. Okay, we'll resort to the big steel tweezers. That's got it. I think we're just about done on this side. Let's turn it over. We'll start with the balance complete. I don't see any way to leverage that balance cock up, so we'll just go on the inside here, and yep, it comes away. And take great care with the hairspring. Everything looks okay, but we'll check that under the microscope. And I just want to see if there's any power in the mainspring. You can see that our pallet fork there is just clicking slightly. There is some power, so I just want to release it before taking that pallet bridge out. There we are, we're sitting right in the center and there's no energy to it. I hope. Otherwise, when we move or remove this bridge, the pallet fork can go flying and the train of wheels will release quickly. We'll just leverage this up a little bit with one of my fine screwdrivers, and everything looks okay. Yeah. So we can start removing the train of wheels bridge, and that will give us access to the gears. Now, in this case, I do have a couple of points that I can get a screwdriver in and just leverage that up away from the base plate. So just see if we can remove these gears. It looks like I can get the escape gear out, but this one, I'm thinking that because the second hand is on the other side, that we have a long staff, so I'm going to need to remove the other bridge. And this is the mainspring bridge. Anti-clockwise thread on the crown wheel, and this one is regular. This is the ratchet wheel that goes over the top of the mainspring. And we can just see the ratchet off to the right. We'll remove that too. I better get a smaller screwdriver for that, I think. And these are usually spring-loaded underneath. Oh, there's the spring. I'm noticing here on this bridge plate that I have an extra screw which is blued, and I'm just going to try that first, and it only turns a quarter of a turn, so I don't think that's part of the construction to hold down the bridge plate. So we'll remove these 3 screws here and see if the plate will come away. Yeah. Yeah, this barrel bridge is... Oh. And you can see underneath here there's some kind of cam that was attached to that blue screw. We'll have a look at that later. Now I can get the rest of the gears out. They keep jumping away from me. I certainly don't want that to happen when we've cleaned them all up at the moment. They are not clean, so I'll forgive myself for dropping them. And now we can get the mainspring barrel out. We're getting quite close now on this side as well. And this whole arbor is coming out as one piece, but there are actually 4 pieces that make that up, and we'll separate that inside the cleaner. But for now, I think we're all done. The base plate is stripped down, and I do want to look at it. This is pre-cleaning, and I'm checking the jewels for condition. They don't look too bad. Maybe just check that one a little bit more thoroughly. There might be a hair on the other side. And I think most of this is just dirt. We'll get that into the cleaner and see what it looks like. For now, I'm going to take a closer look at this balance and the spring. There's a bit of an unusual stud connection here to the balance cock. I've not seen one like that before. But we can see under the microscope here how that works. Balance staff looks in reasonable condition. It needs a polish and a clean. The hairspring looks nice. We'll just run around the edge of the balance wheel here, and I see a couple of timing screws. Looks like we have a stud here that's been replaced at some point. Another timing screw there. Let's get these separated. I'll get the hairspring off. I didn't go too far, fortunately. Everything seems to be jumping away from my pliers today. I think it's best we just keep them somewhere safe. Let's put them in here and they can't go anywhere. We're using this setup as our watch cleaning station. At some point I'd love to invest in a L&R vintage watch cleaning machine, but for now this ultrasonic cleaner does a really nice job. I'm using two different liquids here in the process. This first one is the ammoniated watch cleaning solution. I'll run these parts in through here for about 10 minutes. And once that's done, we'll switch over to the rinse. Again, same process for about 10 minutes. Now I've got these baskets here on the left, just for the small parts. They've got meshes on each side, and that just stops any of the tiny items escaping. Although I've noticed sometimes I can lose a small screw at the edge of the basket on the inside, so it's best to check those before finishing up. And now it's completed the rinse cycle. We'll just get this out and give it a good blow dry. And I've marked up some of my parts boxes here as clean only, so that I just know in future that everything in here has been cleaned. And just look at the difference here under the microscope for these jewels. They came out amazing. And they all look good. I was a bit concerned about this one here on the right side, but that must have just been a hair. While inspecting part of the base plate here, I noticed these burrs, and I imagine these were probably from the original manufacturing of the plate, but really don't want to see those there. They, if they come loose, they could cause a lot of damage to the movement. So I think we'll just remove these, and then I'll use my finest reamer just to ream out that hole a little bit and remove anything that might cause a problem with the operation of the watch. There we go. None of this really explains why the pocket watch wasn't working. I think we'll take a look at this mainspring. Oh, it's very oily. It actually looks like an original as well. Pull this out. Whoa, did you see that? Maybe you heard it. To be so careful with these springs, there's so much energy in them. It just flew out before I had the chance to check it over. I do see this kink here at the end. I think we'll replace that, clean up the barrel. Let's continue the inspection with the hairspring. It looks really nice. I don't see any issues here. And the balance wheel, I'm just going to check this jewel. It's an impulse jewel. I want to make sure there's nothing loose. That seems good too. And our pallet fork, I'm noticing something here on the left. There's a little bit of a gap here. And this light brown material, this shellac, it's like a glue that holds these jewels in place. Just want to make sure that these are solidly held. And I'll grip the oh no, do you see that? This whole jewel is sliding right out. Well, there's a problem. And we'll just check the other jewel as well. That seems to be okay. So it's just this exit jewel here on the left. And it came right out of the pallet fork. And just to give you an idea of the size and scale we're working with, this is the end of my ballpoint pen. Okay, time to repair this. This is a vintage pallet fork warmer. and you can just see our pallet fork is held in place by these two jaws, and then this is a spring bar on top, and that's pressing the pallet fork down. And here's our jaw. And this is my third attempt to try and get this jewel into the jaw. It's so fine. I'm using the old shellac just as a marker in order to get the right depth for the jaw. And the way this works is that heat is transferred to this left ear and flows through to the jaw, and the design means that heat is mitigated on the right side. We use this wonderful vintage spirit lamp for our heat. I put some denatured alcohol in there and it's been wicking away. It should fire straight up. It's actually giving quite a bit of heat off. I've got a piece of shellac on each ear. The one on the left I'm going to be using, and the one on the right is just for monitoring temperature on the right side. I'm going to pick up the finest thread of shellac and I'll place that on top of the jaw. This is my first time doing this, so hopefully that's the right amount. And we'll give this a little bit more fire, and watching the shellac melt onto the jaw. And we don't want too much. The right is just starting to melt, and that's enough, so we'll stop there. And take a look at this under the microscope. It's definitely solid now. The jewel is set in place. I might have used a little bit too much shellac here, but it's secure and we can try it. I wanted to look a little bit closer at this case and see if I could find any jeweler's marks for a service, just to determine if there's other issues affecting the watch. And I found the latest service date as the 26th of December 1942, so 80 years ago. As oils dry up and the watch wears, and this can potentially stop it. That could explain why we're having issues. Perhaps this is a good time just to check where we're at. And in no particular order, everything's been cleaned on the bench and it's ready to go. We deburred our base plate here, and we'll check that that works okay, but we've also looked at all of these jewels under the microscope and everything looks fantastic, pristine. We know that this mainspring has this kink here at the end, and it's an old style blue spring. We'll change this. I've got a new one on order. We had to rebuild our pallet fork here, and I will need to check that dimensionally that is correct and works in partnership with the escapement here. So there's a escape wheel. We'll do that in situ when the watch is together. We'll need to rebuild our balance complete here, but I checked over it and everything looks good. I think I might just polish up these pivots here a little bit before it goes back together. This bridge was good. Our hands are in great condition. I know we've got to clean the dial at the end. That's a little bit dusty. I might put a little bit of polish onto the case and perhaps clean up the chain and penknife, why not, to finish it off. With that, I think it's ready to go to restart the rebuild. On the base plate here we still have this cap jewel to consider, and I want to remove it and get this oiled before we go any further. I'll need to use my jeweler here just to push the jewel out through the base plate. It comes apart in two parts, and we'll put a tiny amount of train oil onto the upper cap and turn this whole jewel over and join the two together. And we can put this back into the base plate. And you can see our oil is just sitting there on the top, just the right amount. Just get these tiny screws, put back in place, and we'll secure this down. And we can get on with the main rebuilding. This is the new mainspring, and this one's an alloy. You can see the difference in the colouring here. We'll just get that into the barrel. These are already pre-oiled, so there's really nothing to add. I'll just get the arbor in place. I'll use this mainspring barrel closer. It just puts an even distribution onto the cap here and gets it centered nicely. We'll just clean it up a little bit, and that's ready to go back into the movement. I'll start with the arbor, and we'll just add some Mobius grease to that and get our clutch wheel in place. I just need grease at the sides here for the clutch. And we'll run this around a little bit. This setting lever here is just used to change between time setting mode and winding. I'll use a lighter oil D5 for the mainspring barrel. And before we put the bridge plate on, I need to remember that these three wheels need to go back. The first one was the one that held the second hand, and this is the third wheel. If I can get it positioned correctly. There we go. And our center wheel. I did spot that little hair, and we'll get rid of that as well. And it's 3 screws here to put the main barrel bridge plate back. I'm not going to tighten them all the way down, just some of the way, because I want to make sure that these trainer wheels here are situated correctly. If those are not right, then there's a chance I could break a jewel or possibly one of the pivots in the wheels. Everything seems good, so we can start to tighten this down a little bit more. And get our ratchet wheel back onto the mainspring. A little bit of grease here for the clicker. And then the wheel that winds this main barrel up is the crown wheel here. And this is the one that has that reverse thread. And the reason for that is as we're winding the watch with the crown, we don't want this wheel to undo that screw. And so it tightens it just slightly as we're winding. Now I can get the escape wheel in place. And once this is in place, we can add the additional bridge. Just got to make sure that's in. Yep, that's good. Sometimes necessary just to wiggle those wheels a little bit. There it is. And the pivots drop into place in those jewels. And we'll just check the movement is good through the train, and then we can start to screw these down. That's looking good. Now it's time for our rebuilt pallet fork. And once this is secured, we can start to put some wind onto the mainspring, because the pallet fork will lock the escape wheel. And then we'll need to check that the jewels are engaging correctly. But as I'm winding this, I'm not actually getting any tension on the spring. Something's not right here. That pallet fork should have some tension on it and snap, but it's not. I've definitely got a problem. Time to undo all this and find out what's going on. It was acting almost as though the mainspring was broken, but of course we just put a brand new mainspring in, so that would seem doubtful. There's something not right though inside the mainspring barrel here. I'll try and put this ratchet wheel on, see if I can get any tension out of it. But no, it's just spinning. And here's our issue. That arbor is not catching the spring. We're going to have to just bend this into place and make sure that that is caught. Alright, now we can put everything back together again. Get back to where we were. Let's try that again. This is much better. And we have some tension on the pallet fork. But we have another problem. I'm just looking at the pallet fork stone engaging with this escape wheel, and it's trapping itself on the edge of the escapement. That's not right. This should release completely. And so I think our shellac there was not good. And our stone is just too far out of the pallet. So back to bringing on the fire. I'm measuring this at 1.88 millimeters. We've just heated the pallet fork warmer up and I'm pushing that stone back in a little bit. We'll measure it again. Now it's cooled down. And that's 1.74, so about 0.14 of a millimeter in. That's about 5/1000ths of an inch. And they're much closer together now. We'll check it back in place, and I'm just seeing the entry stone is just catching the escapement. And if we flick this over to the other side, the exit stone is just catching the escapement, not by much. But they're releasing now, so the escapement can turn each time I move the pallet fork. And that's correct behavior. Good. Continuing the rebuild on the other side, we have these two spring bars to put back. I'm not going to put that under tension just yet until we get this screw started. I won't tighten it all the way down. I'll put the spring into place first. It's just operating against that yoke, which is in turn moving the clutch. Since there's metal on metal, we'll add a little bit of grease here. Clean up after ourselves. And then this one is quite a strong spring bar, surprisingly strong. We'll get that one started. And my tweezers are hardly strong enough to even move that over the bar. Okay, we can move on to the setting wheels. When the clutch is out, the arbor will wind these wheels and in turn set the time. This is the minute wheel just going in. And we'll add the cannon pinion, which is a friction fit. Once the cannon pinion's in place, it really clamps both sides of the watch together. And you can just see the spring center in that cannon pinion. It's time to rebuild our balance. This stud clamp here is just so small. These screws are tiny. It's so easy to lose these. I've got one started. I'm using my smallest screwdriver here, which is a 50 or a 0.5 millimeter screwdriver, which is nice and sharp. I've kept them loose just a little bit so that we can slide that stud into place. And we'll need to adjust that stud slightly by spinning it around so that that first coil will go through these regulator pins. We'll get this in place first and then we can make those adjustments. And ultimately I found it easier actually to do this in the watch. Once we'd made some adjustments to the timing, I actually undid those 2 screws for the stud and just let the spring relax and find its central position between the regulator pins, because the watch needs to beat between those 2 pins evenly if possible. This is our micrometer, and I'll just set that into the middle to begin with. And now for the big moment. How many years has it been since this watch last worked? Does it have a heartbeat? Just carefully put, oh, look at that. She started straight up. Fantastic. And that pallet fork is just working away nicely. To run at its optimum, we'll need to get these jewels all oiled. There's a cap jewel here on top of the balance. And I just need to get to the underside of it. Just the tiniest amount. And you could just see the pivot sticking through the whole jewel underneath. And we'll get the rest of these pivots all oiled on this side, and then turn our movement over and do the other side as well. This is just a train oil for these, the 4th, 3rd wheel. And a little grease on the center wheel here, slightly thicker. There's our minute stem. Oh, I didn't do that very well. We'll redo that one. Second, it's the second hand stem. And that's running very well. But to check this properly, we'll need to put it on the time grapher machine. And after a few adjustments, I thought it wasn't a Rolex that we unboxed here, but look at this. This is in the dial-up position. We're at 2 to 3 seconds per day. And a nice amplitude, 270 degrees. And now I've turned the watch dial down. And what an amazing performance. A very good beat error as well. We're looking for less than 1 millisecond. I'm pleased with that. We'll clean this dial up now, and I'm just dropping a magic weapon into this water. Okay, it's a denture tab. And I've just left that for a few minutes to soak. And that's got the bulk of it off already. There's a few spots here. And I'll just use a soft bud here just to see if I can work on them a little bit. Some of this might be damaged, so I don't want to overdo it. We'll call that part of the 100-year-old patina for the watch dial. Just dry this off a little bit. Now I admit this is my second go at putting the dial on, because I'd forgotten the hour wheel, the center wheel, and that's now in place, and we can get our hands back on the watch. I'm just using a press here to fit them. And the watch is running, so the second hand is obviously moving along. And we can recase it. I polished up this case just a little bit with Flitz polish, and that's come up really nice. The movement has been running for 24 hours now, so very pleased with that. Once these case screws are in place, we can reattach the back. It's just a press fit. One more little air blow for the dial, and we'll put the front bezel on as well. I did clean up the chain and the penknife, and they came out beautifully. With that, we've come to the end of our journey with this wonderful 1924 Hamilton Model 912. It's just great to see this looking so good and running so nicely as well. I'll just leave you to enjoy it. Until next time.